All right, I'm calling to order the special meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee and Board of Directors meeting for October 28th, 2021. And our first order of business is to call the roll.
Director Bregman.
Here.
Director Gibson.
Here.
Excuse me. Director Schmidt.
Here.
Director Russell.
Here. Chair
Kohler.
Here. I now need a motion to adopt the agenda, and we're going to move things around a little bit just in terms of order. We're going to do the grant and the COVID vaccine first, and then the other items. And I'm sorry for this last minute change. I have a hard stop at 10, and we'll be turning the meeting over to Director Gibson at that time.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with those modifications.
Thank you.
Second.
I'm sorry, do we have any public comment on this item before we vote on it?
I see Mr. Roberts' hand is up. Mr. Roberts.
Roger, do you need to talk about this?
Yeah, can you hear me? No, I don't have a comment on this, but I do want to make a public comment.
I'm not there yet. Let us vote on this first, okay?
Okay.
There are no further comments.
Okay, then let's do our roll call vote.
Director Bregman.
Aye.
Director Gibson.
Aye.
Director Schmidt.
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
And Chair Kohler.
Aye. Now is the time for public comment on items not on the agenda. Roger.
Yes, good morning to you all. I've done a couple of calculations that I just want to share publicly with everyone. You have 191,000 customers, according to the latest information that I have. At 55 gallons per customer per day, that would equal 10,505,000 gallons per day of water supplied through the pipeline, assuming that the pipeline was able to operate at close to capacity. That's 32.2 acre feet per day. Now, I understand that your recent calculations of water demand was 84 gallons per person per day. That equates to 16,044,000 gallons per day that would have to be supplied from some other source, and the pipeline would not be able to do that. That's 49.2 acre feet per day. My conclusion from this is the district's journey on diversification of sources of supply has only begun. And you've got a lot of work ahead of you. Marine Conservation League supports that effort, and God bless you.
Thank you so much, Roger. Do we have any other public comments on items that are not on the agenda, Terry?
There are none.
Okay, that brings us to our first calendar item, which is approval of the minutes of the last meeting from September. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Do we have any board comments on this item?
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't at that meeting.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Do we have any public comments on this item, Terry?
There are none. Okay. Director Gibson.
Aye.
Director Russell.
Aye.
Director Schmidt.
Aye.
And Chair Kohler.
Aye. Okay, so we were moving things around a little bit, so I think we're going to go to item 5, which is the grant funding, consideration of the resolution for grant funding for the Water Smart program. And a legislative
Good
update.
morning. Good morning, board members. I'm going to share my screen. This is Matt Segesta, Grant and Legislative Program Coordinator. This morning, I'm going to give you an update on upcoming funding opportunities for priority drought projects, the status of recent grant applications for drought funding, an update on COVID relief funding efforts, and an updates on several bills from the recently completed legislative session. At the state level, we are awaiting the release of the final solicitation from the Department of Water Resources Multi-Benefit Drought Program. In September, the department released a draft solicitation with priority for projects such as emergency interties. The final solicitation has not yet been released, but when it is, the district intends to submit an application for the emergency intertie project and will be coming to the board for resolution supporting its application. The district will also seek funding from federal Water Smart programs, which are administered by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. The district has applied for or is in the process of applying to Water Smart's current offerings, which I'm going to detail on the next slide. On October 4th, the district applied for a $2 million grant from Water Smart's drought program. Today, staff is asking that the board approve authorizing and directing the general manager to sign for this application on behalf of the district, a grant application. Pardon me 1 second here. Staff filed a provisional resolution with their October 4th application, but are required to provide an official resolution within 30 days of application, which is why we're bringing this request to the board today. Additionally, the district's water efficiency manager and her staff are working with the Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership to submit a $2 million grant application to Water Smart's Water Energy and Efficiency Grant Program. If successful, the grant would provide $1.14 million to match the district's budget for turf replacement programs. Staff is not requesting a resolution for this grant, as the Water Partnership is the lead applicant for this grant. We are also evaluating a potential application for Water Smart's Environmental Water Resource Grant Program, and we're waiting to hear back regarding a CDFW Coho Recovery Program grant proposal for Lagunitas Creek restoration planning. Earlier this fall, the state announced several programs offering assistance related to COVID relief funding. The state's Department of Finance is offering a total of $100 million for independent special districts for arrearages and other COVID-related costs. The State Water Board is administering a program offering just under $1 billion for arrearages accrued during the pandemic dates of March 4th, 2020 to June 15th, 2021. The caveat to these two programs is that potential applicants must choose only one. Given that the Water Board funding is tenfold larger than the funds for independent special districts, we are applying to the Water Board program. This week, the district is applying for $2.08 million in arrearage funding. Once it's received, district staff will be required to reverse the charges on the overdue accounts, which comprise the $2 million in arrearages, and send letters to those customers notifying them of the state-provided credit. The State Water Board provides a small administrative stipend, which is set at 3% of the total requested, to cover the cost of processing.
Matt, can you give us a sense about how likely we are to get that? Like, is that just a fund that we apply for and we're more or less assured of getting it, or is it a competitive process?
President Kohler, the Water Board sent out a survey ahead of this program to sort of assess how much of the funding would be allocated. And in response, the water systems in California claimed about $315 million of the $1 billion that's been offered. So we consider our possibility of getting this money quite high.
Okay.
However, we do still have to formally apply for it.
No, sure, of course. I just was trying to, great, thanks, that's helpful.
Great.
Won't most agencies be going for the state board fund? In other words, the competition for that being a lot higher for the very reasons you stated. Is there any logic, in other words, to go to the independent special districts because it's less competitive and therefore even more likely?
Yeah, it's a great question, Director Gibson. I would just say that the independent special districts are open to any special district, no matter what they serve, whereas this Water Board program is really only open to drinking water and wastewater districts. So there probably will be applicants in both pools.
Okay.
Right. I think Matt's on the right path here.
Well, you've thought it through. That's, I guess, really the essence of my question.
Thank you.
Matt, are the arrearages, are these just arrearages that have accrued since the beginning of COVID, or are we going to pick up some of the other customers that were in arrears?
Director Bragman, it is only for the arrearages accrued from March 4th, 2020 to June 15th, 2021. So there is a very firm date set for that, and which our finance staff has gone back and really done a lot of great work to determine which precise arrearages of ours are eligible for this program.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
For a brief legislative update, the California legislative session came to an end last month, but we continue to track bills which are being signed by Governor Newsom. Senate Bill 323, which was signed into law by Governor Newsom in late September, was a key piece of legislation sponsored by ACWA, and it was supported by this board. According to ACWA, passage of the bill will help provide financial stability for public agencies by creating a 120-day statute of limitations for challenges to new water and sewer rates. Governor Newsom also signed Senate Bill 332, which was sponsored by Senator Dodd. The bill limits the liability of private landowners and public agencies who use prescribed fires under specified conditions, including that the burn be for the purpose of wildfire hazard reduction, ecological maintenance and restoration, cultural burning, or agriculture. So, in summary, we are requesting a board resolution today in support of the district's $2 million application for Water Smart funding. We continue to apply for funding for priority drought and conservation projects, and we are looking to the next session for key legislation and funding initiatives.
Thanks, Matt. That's a really helpful overview. As far as the business for today, the 2 million Water Smart application, how flexible is that? The slide went by fast. You may want to put it back up. This is specifically for Pine Mountain and the intertie. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then because we're not, we haven't made a final decision on the intertie, how flexible is that funding should we want to move in another direction in terms of our drought resilience?
I don't believe that we would have to accept it, but I'm not sure that we could move the funding to another project. So I think we would just have to turn down the grant if we received it at that point.
Okay, so if we needed, because you're proposing this for 2 projects, we wouldn't be able to we wouldn't even have the flexibility to, I guess what I'm getting at, does the application specify how this a dollar amount for each of these 2 projects?
The application is only for the emergency intertie.
Oh, why did I think? I thought
requesting.
So I guess this did go past me too fast. I thought this was also for Pine Mountain.
No, my apologies. This is only for the emergency intertie project.
I see. Okay. All right. Thanks for that clarification. I got that wrong. Okay. Any other board comments on this item? All right. Do we have any public comment on this item, Terry?
There are no raised hands.
Okay. So this is an approval item. I think that's because of the timing involved. Normally we don't do approvals at committee meetings, but Matt, you explained that there's a particular timing challenge that we're facing here.
Okay, move approval.
Second.
Okay.
Director Bragman,
Aye.
Director Gibson,
Aye.
Director Russell,
Aye.
Director Schmidt,
Aye.
and Chair Kohler.
I'm voting aye on this, but I just want that to be noted that this, per Matt's comment, that is, that we do have the option if we decide not to move forward with this project of turning down the grant.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to, I think we were going to have a briefing on the COVID-19 vaccination and testing administrative policy.
Yes, oh, sorry. Good then. For some reason, my video will not start.
That's okay.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Great. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen. Okay, great. So good morning, everyone. I'm Vicki with the Human Resources Department, and I'm here to give you a brief update and share information about our draft policy at the COVID-19. So let's see. This is interesting. Okay. I will share information on local positivity rates. I will share the district's vaccination numbers, provide the number of COVID-19 cases at the district to date, and finally share key points of the district's vaccination policy and testing policy. So according to the state's tracking website, which is covid19.ca.gov, Marin County continues to trend lower than the state's average with respect to COVID-19 positivity rates. The state is represented by the gray line, and Marin County is represented by the dark blue or black line there. The state dashboard provides a 7-day look back on their website. And according to the most recent 7-day look back, Marin County has 5.6 new cases per 100 residents for this look back period. And there are 20 new confirmed cases in the last 7 days. And in this period, there was a slight increase prior to the 7-day period, the prior 7-day look back. To date, or as of yesterday, 93.3% of Marin County residents over the age of 12 are fully vaccinated. 75% of district staff have reported to HR that they are fully vaccinated. And we've had 7 COVID positives since the beginning of the pandemic, no community spread, and no known workplace exposures. So to enhance our efforts in providing a safe workplace, we have drafted a vaccination and testing policy, excuse me. As I mentioned, the positivity rates are low in the county and at the district, and we just want to keep our rates as low as possible. So in the process, we considered a few options when developing the policy. One was mandatory vaccinations. The other was weekly testing for unvaccinated employees. And the other option was to maintain the status quo of voluntary vaccinations while continuing to follow the Cal OSHA standards, of course. So we decided that weekly testing for those who are not fully vaccinated, and of course, continuing to follow the safety protocols would provide a great amount of protection to district staff. So we anticipate a rule from federal Cal OSHA, and our policy tracks well with that rule. The rule is based on President Biden's COVID-19 action plan. And we expect that his action plan will require employers with more than 100 employees to receive weekly testing for unvaccinated employees will receive weekly testing. So in the district policy, our draft policy includes boosters to be considered fully vaccinated. And we will track that, of course. To date, right now, according to the website myturn.gov, boosters are recommended for age 65 and older. And if that changes, then we will track whatever we can track in terms of boosters and to track how many employees are fully vaccinated. So we'll continue to monitor that. So I surveyed a few special districts, and here are some of the responses. Of the respondents, the water districts with approximately the same number of employees as Marin Water, such as Contra Costa Water, Alameda County Water District, are requiring weekly testing for unvaccinated employees. And I found that some of the smaller districts are not requiring anything.
Wow.
So again, the key points of our policy would be proof of vaccination or weekly testing. We're still working out the logistics with respect to weekly testing, but that could include on-site testing, sending employees to a drive-up facility with a prepaid voucher, or any other kind of, or a combination. But we just want to keep our options open with respect to this because the technology changes quickly. One thing I'd like to note is that the California Department of Industrial Relations has concluded that employers who require testing must pay for testing and must also pay for the time it takes for employees to get tested. So we will be paying for testing, and we will have testing conducted during district time. And if anything changes with respect to legislation, we'll update our policy on that. So, and for now, we're keeping all confidential records for vaccinations in a confidential file. So we have had some communication with staff. The general manager holds a regular brown bag meeting with staff and is well attended. And at that brown bag meeting, the general manager shared the key points of the policy with staff. And then once the policy is finalized, an email will be sent to all staff advising them of the finalized policy. And then unvaccinated staff will be provided information on how to get the weekly testing. And the next steps, we will continue to finalize our discussions with the union. They've provided some great feedback on this policy so far. We're very happy about that help that we've received. We will finalize the policy and determine an effective date. And we will continue communicating with staff on the importance of vaccination and workplace safety, and particularly as it relates to reducing the spread of coronavirus. And so we will make policy updates as necessary, and a copy of the policy is attached to the staff report. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Vicki. That was very comprehensive. Do we have any board? This is an information item. Do we have any board comment on this?
I have a question. Vicki, I see you're having discussions with the union. Has there been any position at all taken by the union or direction signaled? What kind of attitude are they taking?
It seems like we're in accord. Our thinking is aligned on this matter, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It seems to me that it would be far more efficient if we're going to go down this path to talk to the county and have the testing done at the water district, like on Monday morning or something like that. I'm pretty uncomfortable with the direction we're headed. I don't think it's a wise approach. I don't think 7-day testing is frequent enough to be useful. We just had an employee come down with COVID who's fully vaccinated. I think the infectivity of the new variants are very high. And I might have missed it, but I didn't hear anything about requiring unvaccinated staff folks to wear masks. Or maybe you're presuming that the indoor mask is going to stay in place. I don't know. And I might have missed this part, and I apologize. What percentage of the staff is unvaccinated?
25% of the staff have not reported their vaccination status to us.
So we don't know what that means, though, huh?
Yeah. We could have a higher rate of vaccinated employees at this time.
Yeah. That seems very high to me.
That is high. But I just want to make sure, Larry, that we're getting answer your question. So of the 75% who have reported their status, what percentage of those are unvaccinated? Or did I misunderstand your answer to Larry's question?
Well, that's a good question too.
So 75% of staff are fully vaccinated.
Are fully vaccinated. Okay. So you're unaware of whether or not there are people who are unvaccinated. You've just got 25% that have not reported. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Well, and how is that? How is the reporting approached? What format do they report in?
So they provide a copy of their vaccination record.
And have you talked to any of the people who haven't to find out why they haven't?
No, we have not.
I mean, the problem I'm having, Vicki, is if we're truly at that number, we're below the herd immunity number. So, you know, the likelihood of outbreaks, I think, is reasonably high when you're only vaccinated at that level. Now, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we should assume that people who aren't reporting aren't vaccinated. I don't want us to jump there.
Well,
yeah, and if I could add to that, other agencies that have instituted this sort of approach going forward have found a jump in the report of who's been vaccinated. Yeah. So that's part of what this will give us. The other, I thought it was a fair comment that is this going far enough? The way I think one way to look at this is a first step. So we're taking a first step consistent generally where many agencies are going. The alternative of obviously mandatory vaccinations full stop creates all the issues that we've seen in the papers that are going to be worked out by the courts in some way. So anyway, we're looking at this as a first step to get our database a little more improved so we get full reporting and understand where we are, and then follow the county guidelines, CDC going forward and adaptively manage as appropriate.
Well, and if I can add, we still have a mandatory masking requirement indoors at the district current with our policy in California.
Right, Molly, but when that goes away, that doesn't let the unvaccinated. I think we should have a policy that will be a permanent requirement. If you're unvaccinated, I mean, just as a flag to others. Now, I personally I just had to take 8 airplane flights in the last 10 days. I have not flown for 2 years. I realized I should have been wearing a mask a long time ago, and I will likely always wear a mask on an airplane going forward because I see it as a very good personal health and safety device, but I think it is essential. The problem I'm having with where we are is it's kind of benefiting the people who aren't vaccinated. They're getting paid time off. They're getting the tests paid for. I mean, it just seems wacko to me that, you know, you should be penalized for not being vaccinated, not benefited. Now, one can argue a test is not a benefit, but it is.
I think on that comment,
break in here just for a second because this is where I have to go. So I'm formally turning this over to you, Jack, to continue to moderate. And okay. I'm just going to thank you again for the conversation. And I'll look forward to hearing about how the rest of the meeting goes. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Right.
Director Russell, I just wanted to briefly note that in terms of masking, what we've done from day one is follow the advice of the health professionals. And we are not health professionals either, obviously going in a lighter fashion than the recommendations or the orders, but also going the other way to rest on what the county is directing us, what the CDC is advising us is the approach we've taken from day one. And I think that probably does make sense for us because obviously we are not health professionals. And you know we'll follow the directives and the advice that we're given by the.
I think that's fine, Ben. But the problem I have with it is there's no reason we can't be more strict than the county. And I would also go to the point that I think that anyone who interacts with the public on our behalf, and I mean anyone, should either be restricted from doing that or be vaccinated. Because I think we provide a vector that is just, in my thinking, unacceptable. I put us in the same level as the police. And, you know, I know they're having their troubles, but it's the same idea. If our people are out working and they're interacting with the public or they're behind the front desk, the front counter, I think that they have to be vaccinated to protect the public.
I think an important ingredient in this decision-making process is what the comfort level of our staff is. What's our staff's input, what they think about the situation. I think that's very impactful and should be, at least in the direction we go.
I believe we're going to hear from the union during public comments. That may help inform where staff is to some respects anyway.
Okay.
There's a couple, Vicki, there's a couple other, in addition to indoor masking, there's other high risk situations, sharing a vehicle, working in close quarters, So all those really need to be covered by our policy. So we really need to kind of look at the various tasks and the various risk for spread according to those tasks. So has that been considered and incorporated into the policy? And the other thing is, are we continuing to use that outside contractor to do sanitation?
So the first question, we have a COVID protection plan, which is required by Cal OSHA. And that COVID protection plan covers masking, requires that the employer provide N95 masks for unvaccinated employees, and it also covers the safety precautions.
For various other situations other than just indoor sharing of space, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, and are we still using that contractor to do sanitation?
We are not using that contractor. However, we are doing touch point cleaning, as I have been advised. We are doing touch point cleaning.
And that's also Cal OSHA?
I don't know if it's in our COVID protection plan, but
okay.
I don't know if it's a requirement, but it is something that we're doing.
Okay, good to know.
I think Larry's points are excellent. And like I say, I think if we don't feel comfortable making those kind of decisions ourselves, I think we should invite the county health officer over or one of his staff to talk to us and get a one-on-one. As one of the largest employers in Marin, I think we're entitled to that. And I think it's something, like I say, if we don't feel we have the internal ability, although this stuff is surely not rocket science, then I think we need to get the expertise in that can give us that direction. I think it's a little weak in my thinking, Ben, to just depend on the county to provide a one-size-fits-all evaluation for an employer the size of us.
That's a good suggestion. We'll do that, Director.
Okay, any other board comment before we go to the public? All right, Terry?
There are, excuse me, there are two. First one, Aaron Burton, then Roger Roberts.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Burton.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Aaron Burton. I'm the field representative with SCIU Local 1021. I just want to first thank Vicki and Ben for working, having open dialogue, doing this negotiation process for the COVID vaccine policy. And I also appreciate some of the comments that various board members made. I think that this is the first logical step towards, if we all at some point to move towards a more strict policy, I think it's helpful to start with a in-between policy such as this one. From my experience, when employers have implemented weekly testing, there has been an increase in staff getting vaccinated. So the population of unvaccinated dramatically drops. And then you have just a handful left. And then if we ever decide to implement that policy, we have a much smaller universe to work from. What I can say is that when employers have told the union in other jurisdictions that they're planning to implement a hard mandate, we have had very tense conversations with some of our members about that. And so that has created a very tough atmosphere, even in places where the intermediate policy was first put into place. So my hope is that this policy will have the effect of getting more staff vaccinated. The union is also planning to hold a worksite meeting to explain this policy and to once again to continue to encourage staff to get vaccinated. The union offered vaccinations early on, and we're continuing to encourage that as well. So anyways, that's what I wanted to say on that.
Okay, thank you. And Roger, you said, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
While my own personal bias is that everybody should be vaccinated, and if that requires mandatory action, then that step needs to be taken. But I'm not going to argue that point. I am concerned about whether weekly testing is frequent enough, because you may well find infection rates developing that don't catch people in time. So I wonder about whether weekly testing is sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And do you have one more, M. Shin?
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is Mariette Shin. I'm a GIS specialist at the district and a union steward. And I wanted to first point out something from Vicky's presentation I want to elaborate on. Those who have received the Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccine are asked to get a booster shot. So it's not, and that's available now. I happen to be one of the J&J people, so I know that. So in terms of employee feelings about getting a vaccination or COVID test, I have not actually spoken to any employees who have contacted me to say that they are unhappy about the situation, but I have heard through another steward that there are a handful of people who, of course, like Aaron said, there will always be a handful who are not happy about either the vaccinations or the required testing. However, at a recent brown bag that the GM Ben gave when he presented the draft vaccination policy concept and outlined what that would entail, there were no comments. And I know that the brown bag was very well attended. So I have not personally received feedback from individuals saying that they're unhappy about this. But I have heard through the grapevine that we have, a few employees who have expressed concerns, but I'd say for the most part, I have not heard any negative feedback.
Mm-hmm. And Mariette, when you're talking about negative feedback, which way is the negative?
I'm talking about anti-vaxxing,
okay.
Anti-vaxxers, and also anti-testers.
But not folks who are saying they're concerned about their health because of these people.
Well, actually, I have also heard feedback from some employees who say that they are concerned about, at least, I don't know if not recently, but maybe a couple of months ago, employees who were at the office who were concerned about unvaccinated people who were not wearing the appropriate masks. But then I spoke with Eric Goldman about that, and he issued an email to everybody, a memo that basically outlined once again that masks are required, specific kinds of masks, not the bandanas and stuff. He expressed the detailed types of masks that unvaccinated folks are supposed to wear indoors. And basically, according to COVID guidelines, we're all still supposed to be wearing masks indoors right now.
Yes, it was interesting. On one of those 8 flights that I took, we got a detailed lecture from a flight attendant about the type of mask that qualified. And it was quite interesting because it paralleled exactly the Marin position. I know that for folks who wear glasses to work, the N95s are very tricky because they tend to exhaust upward and onto the glasses, so they tend to fog up. And the vented N95s, of course, are much better for that. And the flight attendant made it very clear that the vented N95s were not allowed on the airplane.
That is absolutely correct. We are not allowed to use vented ones indoors.
Okay. Yeah, indoors or in Marin, and like I say, even on the airplane. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
All right, Terry, do we have any other public comment?
Thank you. There are no further comments.
I have another question, Jack.
Yeah.
Do we know what percent of the 25% are union folks and what aren't?
Vicki, do you know?
I would imagine it's 50-50, but.
Yeah, I don't have those specific numbers.
Can you get that for us?
Yes.
Like I say, my guess is it's 50-50. You know, it's the same split as the district, but who knows?
Okay. All right, Terry.
What about Roger's question about more frequent testing and my point on that? I think that's important also. And I didn't get a response to my proposal that we have someone come in and do the testing at the district.
We are, so Vicki shared, we're still evolving our thinking on the logistics, but we are talking to a couple folks that may be able to do exactly what you're saying, mobile testing. They come here on a set time. There are some that would be difficult for, but we're looking into all options. Part of the issue with that is the numbers. So once we have the numbers, we'll be able to better figure out the best logistical approach. They want a minimum number to come here, that sort of thing.
Well, let's just toss the numbers in that we have. I mean, we're talking about something that's going to cost us over $5,000 a week to provide this service, whether we pay for it outside or inside. So, you know, this is not an insignificant hit. I mean, this is $20,000 a month.
Yeah. I saw a couple of 100,000 plus per annually, I think, on that.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions from the public, Jerry? None. Okay. That's information only. So we'll go to our next item here, which is actually back to item number 2, I think. Amendment to our Environmental Science Associates Agreement.
Yeah, good morning, directors. Sean Horn, Watershed Resources Manager. The title of this item is Amendment number 3 to Agreement 5789 for on-call environmental services with Environmental Science Associates. The district entered into this contract in July of 2019. We went through a request for proposals to bring on a consultant to support the district to do compliance for projects. That was set at a not to exceed $250,000 mark. And in the first year, we didn't make a lot of use of this contract. We used a limited capacity of it. We went through 2 amendments to date. The first amendment was to extend the end date, which was incorrectly set at 1 year. So we extended that to be the intended 2-year contract date. And then the second amendment was to extend the contract for 1 additional year and add additional capacity to support the Lagunitas Creek flow release study and temporary urgency change petition application. So that's been completed. So amendment number 3 is being moved forward because we have reached the capacity of this contract and for the on-call services component. And that's for some critical water supply and drought related infrastructure projects, as well as some watershed efforts. Mm-hmm. So some of those projects include the Pine Mountain Tunnel Replacement Project and doing the CEQA analysis for that project. Supporting the NEPA analysis that was required for the grant that we received for Azalea Hill Trail project. And then also moving forward our next phase of culvert replacement project, a permit application for that. And then also for the emergency intertie analysis and environmental studies associated with that effort. So in the specifics of amendment number 3, we would be adding $200,000 of additional capacity for on-call services. We'd also be adding $146,000 for the Pine Mountain Tunnel Replacement Project, specifically for the environmental permit applications and the assessments that need to go into supporting that effort. And then also adding $250,000 in additional capacity for the emergency intertie project for environmental permit coordination, package development, and some of the additional analyses that are required by our partners that are supporting that project. And then $154,000 to support ongoing monitoring work for the Lagunitas Creek TUCP. And that's really to refine the watershed model that we developed, as well as the habitat suitability model, to make that a useful set of data sources for the district moving forward to understand how accurate our model that we developed is and how we can use it in the future. So the final element of this is we are also adjusting and the rates for ESA, updating those, which haven't been updated since 2019. And one specific caveat to that point, that is only for the on-call services. All of the other projects are remaining at the rates that were in the original contract. So the recommendation today is for the Finance Committee to review and refer to a regular scheduled board meeting for the general manager to execute amendment number 3 to the ESA agreement, and that would bring the total contract amount to 1.3 million for this fiscal year. So with that, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add a note that this direction of developing this environmental on-call services contract is new with this contract. We used to, on every project, as part of the project, go out, procure an environmental consultant and pay for it through the project. So this is a much more efficient way to do it. It's a nice advancement. And you haven't been seeing the collective amounts over time that you're seeing here because they were within the discrete projects, just explaining that.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's sort of true, Ben, but that's a long time ago. In between, we hired an individual whose name has escaped me right now, who started doing the negative decks in particular,
right,
in-house.
Yeah.
So there was a period of time when I would say 80 or 90% of the EIR deals were done in-house. So I apologize. I can't remember that individual's name. It'll come to me.
Dana, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah,
yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
What was the name?
Dana.
Dana, oh yeah.
So that's something you might want to think about, okay? Because as I recall, the cost dropped substantially when that occurred.
Okay. You may have said it, Sean, but if you did, I missed it. What's the total number of projects we have ESA working on right now?
Oh, the total number of projects is more than what we've summarized in this agreement. The ones we summarized in this agreement are the major ones. So there's 5 projects in this this staff report that we summarized, but then there's a lot of one-off smaller negative NOEs and things like that that were.
Okay. And I guess this is a question for Molly. Molly, we don't have to put this out to public bid, I gather.
Well, because this is an extension, we did an RFP for the initial contract. I think we have the ability to extend for another year.
I see. And then at that point,
we can evaluate at what point in the future we may want to go back out with an RFP to reopen the process.
Is it the type of contract we would have to put out to public bid if we weren't in this process?
Typically, if we were doing it initially, we would want to put out an RFP for to really evaluate who what the competitiveness of the proposals are, also the level of expertise. And the amount of resources that were available to us. Those are all factors in a professional services agreement. Right. But it's typical that we, when we have a master agreement like this for all-encompassing services, that we would keep that for 2 to 5 years, I would say is pretty average, and that we would want to evaluate when would be appropriate to go back out and not get stale as far as relying on the same consultant.
Okay, thank you. Any other board comment?
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing, Jack. I would like to say that ESA is an excellent choice and they do excellent work. It was not at all meant to criticize their work. I'm very pleased with what they've done and I'm very pleased with their abilities.
Okay. Larry,
I have a question for Sean. On the Pine Mountain Tunnel project, I'm a little bit unsure what that is referring to. Is that the replacement tank on Concrete Pipe Road?
That's correct.
And then on the TUCP, this is somewhat collateral, but with the recent burst of rain, does that negate part of the plan to delay release?
So we're conducting our monitoring work, and that's really going to inform how we move forward. So fisheries staff are out in the field now conducting the work that we said we'd do under that TUCP monitoring plan. And there's an adaptive management component and trigger. So if we do see coho in the system, we would adaptively manage appropriately.
So do we have folks out there taking a look and seeing what's actually going on?
Yeah, that's correct. We started earlier this week. Technically, the TUCP monitoring would start next week, but yeah, we're in the field.
You started earlier because of conditions?
Yeah.
You sound a little under the weather there, Sean.
That's true.
Okay, you might need to get tested.
But... Yeah,
that already happened.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I hope you feel better.
Remember, wash your hands and wear your mask.
Yeah, yeah.
And avoid baby showers.
Any other board comment? Any public comment?
We have one, Roger Roberts.
Okay.
Can you hear
Mr.
me?
Roberts.
Can
Yes,
you
sir.
hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Molly answered my questions. I wondered whether any elements of this extension would require public bidding. And Molly, I think, satisfied my concern. Thank you.
Mine too.
Thank you. There are no
Thank you.
further comments.
Glad I could do that.
Okay, that takes us, I guess, to item number 4 on our agenda, the Express Employment Professional Temporary Staffing Support Agreement.
Yes, good morning, directors and committee. My name is Kelly Gerhardt. I'm in the Human Resources Department as a senior HR analyst. And today my item is item number 4, agreement with Express Employment Professionals for temporary staffing support. What we have experienced in the last few months is an increase in our request for temporary staffing, mostly due to the drought and the related programs and support needed both in the field and in the office administration to help make sure those projects and programs go through. So staff is requesting review and referral to the next board meeting for the general manager to have authorization to sign an agreement with Express Employment Professionals so that we can get that temporary staffing. It offers us flexibility. Also, because we don't know how long the drought will affect us and what is needed, whether somebody will be needed for a couple months or for 4 months or longer, it puts us in a really good position to have the flexibility of getting the help we need when we need it. So that's what we are requesting today.
Okay.
And what the staff is that?
Excuse me?
What are the categorization of the?
Okay, most of the requirements are out of the water efficiency department. We have folks that would be going out into the field and talking with customers about some of the programs that are out there existing. We also have an increase in the data that's being collected because of the drought and the program. So we have a couple of administrative staff making phone calls and collecting data and analyzing that and providing that to staff.
And are we
mostly in the water efficiency area, but we have a couple in other areas as well.
Were they involved when we had the extra cleaning service? Were they involved in any of that, or is that totally separate?
That's totally separate.
Okay.
Director Gibson.
Okay, thank you.
and so do we have rates established for these folks, or how does that?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And it varies depending on the assignment. So anywhere from $19 an hour to about $27 an hour. Because of the cost of the temp agency is taking all of the risk. They're covering workers' comp, they're covering benefits. And so we, again, I recommend this, staff recommends this because of the flexibility and the uncertainty of how long we need somebody versus taking them on ourselves.
Right.
Those costs then are fully burdened.
Correct.
And where are they located?
Express is located in San Rafael.
Okay, well, that's a good start.
Yeah. Okay, other board questions or comments?
Have you discussed it with the union? Is there an agreement with the union as to renewing this contract?
We have not discussed it with the union. We have not. We actually have 2 different temp agencies that we have used in the past. And so, no, we have not talked with the union.
But these are to fill temporary positions, not to replace any permanent positions. So I think
that's correct. These are strictly temporary, short-term, anywhere from a month to maybe as at the most 5 or 6 months per assignment, not any longer than that. And it's not meant to replace any regular staff. This is additional urgent need, mostly because of the programs, the drought-related programs.
Right.
And you haven't heard from the union about this issue or this renewal? Okay.
No, not at all, Director Bragdon.
If I could just weigh in there a little bit, Larry, for a second. I think this makes sense. Obviously, there's times when we do need temporary help I do want to make sure too, though, that we're cognizant that sometimes the skills and knowledge that somebody even temporarily builds over a number of months, that to lose that skill and that knowledge is a lost asset to the district. And to the extent that these temporary positions aren't garnering knowledge that then walks back out the door, you know, when the term ends, that's a lost investment in whether that's that instead of that being a temporary position, whether those duties or something could become part of somebody else's, who is a permanent staff, could be part of their responsibility. So we just don't lose that valuable experience and knowledge.
That's a point well taken, Director Schmidt. So, and I believe as more time goes on and we determine what the needs are, that is something that is a very good point, that some of the things we wouldn't want to lose and it may go over to regular staff.
And I assume they would be subject to the same COVID protocols.
Yes, they are required the exact same thing. So I work with the temp agency to make sure that of course, they're submitting vaccine status, they're following all of the protocols, everything in our COVID protection plan. They go through all of that. No difference.
I have one more question and I agree with Monty completely on his comments. Are we forbidden from approaching them if we find somebody who's a gem?
No, we are not. Of course, if we find somebody that we really would like and we want to hire them, we can do so. But there is a fee, a conversion fee, depending on the length of time that they're on their payroll. But yes, we can certainly do so.
Okay, cool.
Other board questions or comments? Any comments from the public?
There are none.
Okay, this is an information item, I think. So not information, refer to the board for approval. All right, well, we'll do that. That takes us to item number 6, our monthly financial update.
All right. Good morning, Chair Gibson, directors. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so this will be a review of the month ending September 30. So we have 1 quarter of financial data under our belt now. So first we'll take a look at the revenues. And if you look at the information package you have, attachment 3 gives you a breakdown of the revenues. You can see, first of all, if we're 1 quarter of the way through the year, we'd be at 25% if we were tracking linearly, which we don't, but just gives you a bit of a benchmark for how we're doing, especially on the expenditure side. So you can see on water revenues.
Chuck, just so you know, the slides are showing 2 slides in your notes, if it's not a problem for you, just so you're aware of what we're seeing.
Yeah. So we've got water revenues, which are water sales, service charges, and the watershed management fee. We're about 23.5%. And we'll talk about the timing of those in the next slide. If you look at that, it looks like we're right on budget. But again, the way that the water sale revenue comes in is not linear. And then the other revenues, those things like rents and grants, watershed payments, those are tracking right about where they should be, about 25%. So total operating revenues, $20.9 million, 23.5% of budget. Then the fire flow fee, we'll get that first slug from the fire flow fee with the December remittance for property tax. So we'll see that in January. So we should get about 50% of that in January. And then capital revenues, including capital maintenance fee, coming in about 22.1% of $4 million through the first quarter ending September 30. And then we'll look at the revenues. So you can see here, we break out the different components of those water sales revenues, the commodity charge, the water sales service charge, and then the watershed fee. Service charge and watershed fee are right about where they should be, a little north of 22%. And then you can see the actuals. So, we're 24.1% of actuals, but if you go back and look at attachment 1 in your package, we actually give you a breakdown of what's budgeted by month and what the actuals were in previous periods. So if you look at the way that we budget this, we budget about a third of our water consumption or sales are in the first 3 months of the year, July, August, September. And then if you compare that to where we were at in the previous year for the first quarter, we're actually down about, we're down about 26% below compared to last year. And then we show you the monthly water sales graph here. And again, this includes the service charge and the watershed maintenance fee that we just talked about. And you can see in the blue lines here is for the month of the current year, the red lines for the previous year. So you can kind of see this tracking. In July, we were down about 18% compared to the previous year. In August, we moved down to about 19%. And then September, we're down about 20% on those components, all combined. And then you can see where we are having some water savings by customer class. So overall, we're down about 22%, down by 1,695 acre feet compared to the same period last year. And most of your savings there is coming from two places. It's coming from the single family decrease. That's about a 25% decrease. And then if you look at your irrigation numbers here, that's a 30% decrease. So that's what's giving you most of that 22% decrease volumetrically in water usage. And then if you look at like the multi-units customer classes there, those are down about 12 to 15%. So you're getting some savings there too, just not as major as you're getting in single family and irrigation.
And Chuck, these are from actual billing data?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So they're by definition 60 days behind or so.
Right. Yep. And then we show you the tier consumption data going back several years. Really not much changes here, but you can see, you can see that the drop in the current fiscal year, it's almost exactly according to what the drop was in 16. As a matter of fact, tier 4, 104 acre feet, 104 acre feet are identical. And then you kind of get these larger drops in the higher tiers, and then that percentage of decrease falls as you get into the lower tiers. So the top tier, you can see there, tier 4 dropped by over half, and then that works its way down until you get into tier 1, which has obviously a less precipitous drop there. And then
but I think those numbers are very interesting, Chuck, because I mean, it's 237 to 104. So we're getting a 50%, more than 50%, 60% reduction in tier 4.
Yeah.
I think that is really important and something we should incorporate, Ben, in future presentations with respect to our conservation efforts. I mean, look at even the tier 2, 1,400 to 838. These are much larger numbers than we've been talking about, which it makes sense because that's where you can do something about irrigation, huh? The top 3, the bottom 1, it's more difficult. That looks like a pretty, we're getting into, although Cynthia would disagree with me, I believe we're getting into demand hardening at this point. But look at the drops in the upper tiers, not doing so well in tier 3, which I don't know what that's all about, but the other ones are doing great.
Mm-hmm.
Well above the 40% that we asked for. Even the tier 3 might be at 40%.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's a very interesting slide.
I think it'll help us in the future also for, we're always trying to figure out what the price elasticity is in these different tiers. And we kind of, when we were doing this before, we kind of assumed that tier 3 and 4 were relatively inelastic, but I'm not sure looking at that holds.
Well, I don't know that it's priced. I think that I don't think they didn't even know about the penalties when this data was collected. So I think this is just community spirit. I think people are recognizing the problem and they're doing what they can do.
Well, they have the moving around room. I mean, in those higher tiers, you can do something.
Yes. And the tier 2, by the way, tier 3, sorry, is almost a 40% reduction. Yep. Even those numbers there, 495 to 316 is a 63%. So it's a 37% reduction.
That suggests to me that when we set the goal, 40% was the goal we've set, it should be more specific than that. We should set the goal by tiers, you know, this is a goal for tier 4, 3, 2, 1, and so forth. So it gives us a more realistic measurement of how we're doing.
Well, yeah, I agree with you completely, Jack. But I mean, if I had to set the tiers, I think I'd set it as 0 for tier 4. You know, I mean, I understand that there's large lots, but even then, you know, you want grass or you want water, you know.
Well, we'd set them at what kind of reduction we're looking to see in each tier.
Yes. Yeah. And it looks like, frankly, I think we should somehow incorporate this, Ben, that all the numbers above tier 1 meet the 40%, almost meet the 40% requested number. The tier 4 numbers are 44% reduction.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that's good.
Okay. All right. Chuck, are you done or you got more there?
I have more slides, no more on this slide.
Okay.
So that to the point on the real-time data, we show the board this AMI data every month for Tiburon Belvedere areas for single family Resi Code 1. So here you can kind of see the pattern. You know, this last gray bar here is the current year. Then you see the previous year. The blue bar is the year before that. So you can see that you know, for the fiscal year here, July, we had a 25% decrease in these 1,175 meters in usage. And then we had a 28% decrease in August, and then actually hit a 30% decrease here in September. So at least for this area of our service district, you can obviously see the effects of conservation there. And then there's a much smaller sample size, but it allows us to look at institutional and business meters, 82 meters, and these are throughout the service district. And here you see a trend here where you see a 14% decrease in July, 21% increase when you hit August, and then 18% decrease year over year when you hit September. So kind of showing the same scenario as the previous data did. And then we'll move into the expenditure side here. So again, just keeping in mind, if we're tracking linear, we're through one quarter, we get 25% of our expenditures. So personnel services is tracking right about where you'd expect, 24%, $13 million. We always have some kind of static vacancy, so you're always going to be a little bit below usually what your budget number is. Maintenance operating expenses are right on at 25%. Financing costs, we artificially spread those over the year, so those are right on 25%. And then that capital allocation, the portion of labor primarily that we allocate out of operating to capital, is at 1.2% or 1.2 million or 23.4% of budget. Fire flow projects are about $1 million, 13% of budget. And then district projects, those are capital projects that we have, and that includes equipment purchases that we make. Those are 12.8% or 4.1 million. But as we started doing in the last several meetings, we add in those encumbrances that we have on the capital side. So some of the big ones there are like the San Geronimo treatment plant generator. We've got some pipeline projects that are in there, watershed fuel reduction that make up that $7.1 million encumbrances. And that brings you up to $34.6 million total in budget, or about 26% of budget. So again, we're tracking right about where we should be. And then we'll look at the ending fund balances. These usually are pretty static, but we've started dipping into these a bit due to the drought. So you can see restricted and designated fund there stays about $20 million compared to June 30th. So it really hasn't changed much. And these are things like workers' comp general liability that we account for in the restricted designated fund. Then we have the rate stabilization reserve. Again, we started dipping into that due to our response to the drought. So that's dropped from $9.4 million at June 30th down to $4.9 million now. And then fire flow fund is at $2.2 million. Pension reserve fund is remained stable for quite some time at $2 million. And then our capital fund, which we target policy to be 1 year worth of capital projects, is at $21 million. Then the operating unrestricted fund, which we think about as our reserve in addition to our rate stabilization fund, that's at $27.8 million. So operating fund balance to budgets in months, We're 3.7. We target 6, but I don't think we're take us some time to get there. Debt service coverage is projected at 3.0. Outstanding bonded debt's about $140 million. And then the smaller debt issues of $6.9 million. And then we kind of broke down the reserve components, which is the rate stabilization fund and that operating unrestricted fund, just to look where we're at and what we're spending money on. So you see here, starting with the rate stabilization fund, we started at June 30th at $9.4 million. So far on the emergency intertie project, we've expended $2.9 million. Castagna, we've expended or moved $0.5 million in budget for them. Peacock Gap, $150,000. And then we've moved money to the contingency fund for operating requirements for the drought. So we originally reported to you that we moved $500,000, and we just recently moved another $500,000 over to the contingency fund. And I should mention the intertie project here. This will go up a bit based on the contract amendment you just referred to the board in an earlier item. So this fund balance will drop a bit the next time that we report to you with the October financials. And then moving down to the operating unrestricted fund, we started with $32.6 million. That's just the transfer end that you see from the rate stabilization fund. And then we spent money on drought-related operating costs, a little over $500,000, water conservation rebate programs, $400,000. And then other operating costs are $4.85 million. Some of that is covering, if you go back and you look at attachment 3, you can see that we are expending more than revenues are coming in right now. So we're filling that gap. And then we also have some accruals that we make up there. So all said and done there, that leaves us, we moved from $32.6 million at June 30 down to $27.8 million as of September 30 in the first quarter. And some of the big costs that we've expended in here for the drought, probably the biggest cost was for the water patrol. We spent about $184,000 in overtime. And then we have things like advertising, community outreach, printing, all those kind of costs that go along with communications on conservation. So in summary, we are definitely seeing the droughts impact our revenues, as you can see. Expenditures are tracking about right on with budget. And our reserve balances are declining, not at an alarming rate, but they are coming down, and we expected those to come down. We expect them to come down further as we work our way through this, but that is by design. If the board has questions, we can field those.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Chuck, are we still seeing COVID-related delinquencies at the rate we did before? Are those coming down too?
Director Bragdon, they are coming down. I think we actually put in a couple of slides in reserve here. So this is how we were looking year over year. So you can see that overall we're looking about the same, but these are kind of working their way through the system. So you see that 30 days are dropping, 60 days are dropping, 90 days are dropping. Those are coming down. And I think a lot of that's because we've started noticing customers that they're delinquent.
Okay, good.
Before we leave that, Chuck, do we have a plan for what happens in the event we get one of those grants? And what number do we use? If a person has paid their bill down and we've included them in the outstanding, what do we do then?
Yeah, Director Russell, our customer service people are working on that, and those are going to be handled via credits. That's how we're going to have to do that.
Right, but what do we do with if we get $100 in grant money and we don't have a home for it? What happens? It just goes back to them. In other words, if we get $100 from the grant agency, but it's already been paid by the homeowner.
Oh, yeah, I assume that would go back. I don't think we could keep those dollars.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we need to think about that a little bit just so we have a plan.
Yeah.
Because when the wind of what we're talking about is fully felt by our users, we may find that they stop paying some of these.
Well, the important.
Yeah, I think though there was a time period on that. I think it ended in June, if I remember.
See.
So yeah, I don't think they could retroactively make that decision.
But when you talk about it declining, are you talking about people paying past or paying current? You said that the 60, 90 days was declining.
Yeah, I'm saying that the number of delinquencies in those is declining and the amount is declining.
And does that mean the total, or does that mean they're not delinquent now? In other words, are they paying the past too, or do we automatically take the money for the past first?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're saying like first in, first out. Yes.
I'm just asking what our, I don't care. Just asking what our policy is. So
yeah, they pay the most delinquent first.
So they're catching up, basically, right, is what those numbers mean.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Other board comments or questions? Any public comments or questions?
Yes, there is one. Mr. Roger Roberts. Go ahead, Mr. Roberts.
I've asked this question before, and I think I know the answer, but I am going to repeat it. What portion of the money that's being used to support the upfront costs of pursuing the Intertie project, how much of that will we recover in the bonding of the project itself? Because if you are not going to recover all of that cost, then that means you have a permanent impact on the reserves in that respect. Thank you.
Would you like me to answer that, Vice Chair Gibson?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Roberts, we built in a reimbursement resolution when we initially took the bonding package to the board. So we can actually reimburse all the costs that we have for that project out of bond proceeds. So that would be returned to the reserves.
Okay. All right. Any other public comment?
There are none.
That takes us to item 7 on our agenda, the quarterly investment report. Okay, so not much to report here. You can see that LAIF, which is where the preponderance of our portfolio is earning 22 basis points, and portfolio is earning 18.6 basis points. Pretty low interest environment, obviously. We all show you the yield curve here, so you can see moving out from 1 year out to 5 years. You're moving from 7 basis points out to 0.96 basis points, almost 1% when you're looking at the yield curve. The only thing I would add to that, I know there's interest by the board in looking at some alternative investments, and I actually talked to Don Collins, who's the broker for the district, on looking at government-sponsored entities, things like Ginnie Mae, and he agrees it's an interesting idea. Opportunities at the right time to gain some yield there. When I talked to him about 2 weeks ago, they were getting 0.98% on Ginnie Mae, for example, at the 5 year, and that's the highest maturity that we can go for in our portfolio. What he was just warning me about is a couple of things. You get that almost 1% return if you hold to maturity. The problem is, as he points out, is that if you have that long range maturity and rates go up in the future, which I think almost everyone expects is going to be the case, then you're going to have an unrealized loss, which will be a realized loss if you have to sell that asset class before maturity. So you're kind of locked in there. The other thing to keep in mind is that right now, as we've shown you with our, as we start to deplete our reserves a bit, and we're working our way through this drought. Right now, liquidity is our primary concern. So I just tell you that to let you know we're looking at those ideas to increase yield if we can. Just not sure that it's the right time yet, but I think there will be a time to maybe look at places where we can boost the yield on the portfolio when we're at a time where we're a little bit more financially stable.
What's the maximum yield this investment has ever paid?
Which investment, Ginnie Mae?
Well, no, the ones that we're looking at the curve on.
Oh,
What's the highest rate of return we've ever achieved?
Yeah, they move all over the place.
I know, but that doesn't answer the question. I mean, there is a highest number.
Yeah, I don't know what the highest they've ever achieved is. I mean, if you go back to 2008 when we hit the recession, there was a point at which WAVE, which is basically risk-free, was paying 6%. So I mean, we could look up that data, but yeah, it varies wildly.
What I'm trying to assess, Chuck, is I understand what you said, but the bird in the hand may be so minuscule that keeping him in your hand doesn't really benefit you. That the downside of having to pay a penalty for an investment that we need to pull out of, and everyone realizes that this particular time is a difficult time to be making these kind of assessments because of these unusual cash demands in a period when our income is dropping. Those are tricky. We got that. That's a tricky environment. But what I'm getting at is, it seems to me almost wishful thinking to think that this is somehow going to jump from 0.96 to 2.96. Okay, maybe it will, but I always remember these numbers as being extremely low. From historical,
and they have been extremely low for a very long time. But I think, and it's a long discussion, but I think those times may be changing.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, just one more of a comment for Chuck on the Ginnie Mae's. I don't know if the broker gave us the rate for a mutual fund Ginnie Mae or buying a direct Ginnie Mae.
This was the direct Ginnie Mae.
Okay.
So there's also there's a Vanguard Ginnie Mae fund. I think the board had seen that last time. That's available out there. The problem with the funds is that they go beyond our 5-year ladder.
Yeah, I mean, I think the funds pay less. The other thing I was going to say about Ginnie Mae's, and I definitely defer to you as to the timing of when or if you do it. 2 things. One, our pension reserve fund has been set at $2 million for a long time. So it's not something that we need to have fungible assets in. And the other thing about Ginnie Mae's is people pay their mortgages off. So they also generate actual cash as they pay their mortgages down. So you're not getting interest. I'm just saying you are generating cash, so that if you did have a jump in interest rate, you're probably going to be generating a fund of cash that you could reinvest or roll over. So it's just, I know you've got a lot on your plate right now, but if there's just some nuances that are worth considering. So that's about it. So thanks for at least mentioning it.
Okay. All right. Other comments from the board? All right. Any public comment on this?
Yes. Again, Mr. Roger Roberts.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Roberts.
Just a matter of curiosity, there are federal treasury bonds that are inflation protected. Is that part of the consideration of inclusion for the portfolio?
Chair Gibson, should I answer that? So, yeah, Mr. Roberts, those are considered. Actually, what you see here in this bar is actually the treasury yield. That's what this is.
Okay. But that's a pure ordinary bond. I mean, there are inflation protected bonds that have a different track.
Yeah, there are tips, that are going to have obviously a lesser yield, but yeah, I mean, as far as inclusion in the pod, everything's looked at. And actually, we're invested in WAVE. Those securities are part of WAVE's portfolio.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. With that, I think we've concluded our agenda. We're ready for adjournment. Thanks to all of our staff, and thank you, board members, for participating. We'll have a good weekend. Yeah.
Thank you.
You too. Take care. See you.
Have a good weekend.